Welcome to the Conservation Chronicles, the podcast for the Wildlife Trust for Lancashire, Greater Manchester and North Merseyside. I'm today's host, Lydia German, and today we are going to be talking about a topic which is very close to my heart, which is red squirrels, because our native red squirrels are in trouble. Grey squirrels were brought over here from North America in the late 1800s, and as a result of that, the numbers of our native red squirrels have plummeted, leaving them highly endangered and vulnerable to extinction. And now there's only a few strongholds left, one of which is the Sefton Coast. And it's the job of our Red Squirrel project officers to work on making sure that their numbers can start to recover. So I'm really excited to welcome today's guests. We have Molly and we have Melissa, who are our Red Squirrel officers. And you may notice in the background, we actually have a third guest today. This is Houdini. This is one of our Red Squirrel kits, who is an orphan that these guys are doing an amazing job of looking after. So if you hear him scattering around, he's very energetic today, but I'm so excited to have this non-human guest, our first one on the podcast. And we will touch on the work that these guys do around all of the orphaning of the kits as well. So I'd like to say a warm welcome to you both. These guys work on monitoring, educating people, researching, and as we say, raising orphaned kits as well. So hello to you both. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Thank you. So let's scale it right back, because I know a lot of people watching may never have even seen a red squirrel or know that they're native and the grey squirrels aren't. I mean, certainly for me, this is only the second time I've ever seen a red, because I'm from Greater Manchester and they're just not there anymore. So start from the beginning. Why are they endangered now?
So you kind of touched on it already, but grey squirrels are one of the biggest threats to our native red squirrels. So as you mentioned, they were brought over. They're a non-native species, the grey squirrels. So they were brought over from North America in the late 1800s. And unfortunately, they've now become an invasive species. So non-natives don't always become invasive or cause harm, but grey squirrels have become invasive. So they outcompete our native red squirrels for food and space. They're about twice the size of a red squirrel. So they dominate those food sources in woodlands. And then one of the big things is the squirrelpox virus. So this is a virus that grey squirrels have. They kind of hold on to that virus. They're what we call an asymptomatic reservoir host. It doesn't affect them, but unfortunately, when it gets passed on to red squirrels, it causes them a lot of harm and they do die quite quickly because of that virus.
Yeah, it's really scary when you think about it, the damage that the greys can actually do to the reds. And I've seen photos of squirrelpox and it is not nice, and it is not a nice way to go either. So what are we doing to help the red squirrel population recover? I'm going to come to you, Melissa.
So one of the main things we do is grey squirrel control. So it's not nice, and if there was an alternative, we would be doing it. However, if we did nothing, we wouldn't have red squirrels in 10 years. So that's the main thing. We do obviously raise abandoned orphans. So that just helps the little ones out when we get them. And we also monitor to see what we can do and see where they're increasing, where they're decreasing, and what we need to do to help them.
Yeah, and I understand that the numbers dropped hugely. Was it 2008? Yeah. Tell me what happened then.
Yeah, so squirrelpox strikes again. So that was the main thing that happened. What we used to have around the Formby area was actually quite a high density of red squirrels. So we had a lot of them squeezed into one area. And if anybody knows anything about diseases and how they work, once that squirrelpox virus did get into that population, the population crashed because there were so many of them in an area and they were all feeding off of the same feeders. So historically, one of the conservation measures was to feed the red squirrels to try and help give them a bit of a boost. But after we saw those population crashes, we soon realised that actually the feeding practices were perpetuating that disease problem. So that stopped. And since then, the population has been climbing back up to its numbers previously, but we now have, thankfully, a lower density, which just takes that disease pressure off a little bit and helps them spread out into other areas.
So there was this massive crash back then, and like you say, it's slowly recovering. You mentioned to me earlier about it maybe have stabilised in the past couple of years. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so the like I said, we previously had quite a high density of red squirrels in an area, which sounds like a really good thing to have lots and lots of red squirrels, but actually naturally we'd find less than one squirrel per hectare. So we actually want them at kind of that lower density, but we want them in more areas. So when we say it might be a little bit trickier to see them out kind of in Formby areas, that's just purely because of the density now. We do have that lower density, but they have thankfully been popping up in some of the woodlands where we did historically lose them.
Okay, so you mentioned grey squirrel control as well. Just to go back to that, there's an element of that that's involved. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes, so the grey squirrel control, we do it, there's two different ways. One of them is our trap loan scheme. So anybody within the Red Squirrel Stronghold area, if they repeatedly see grey squirrels, they give us a phone call and we pop them a trap in their garden. And then when they catch a grey, they give us another phone call and the volunteer will come and take it away and dispatch outside of things, or we go into woodlands and we can shoot and trap, and that's just a way of removing them from the more remote areas.
And what has the response been from locals like? Because I know in the area people are really passionate about protecting the reds. How have you seen the response over the years from people getting involved?
Yeah, a very positive response, you know, that especially in that Formby area and Ainsdale and Crosby now, we've got quite a good population of red squirrels because of our fantastic volunteers that we've got that help us with that trap loan scheme. And I think there's a sense of ownership around those red squirrels. People, you know, see them as their red squirrels to protect. And the amount of calls we get if there is a grey squirrel that comes into a garden, we'll sometimes get 10 emails or phone calls that come through because it's gone through all of the gardens and everybody has reported
it's like
it to
a journey,
us.
tracking it through.
Yeah, which is great for us. You know, if we were to put that on a map, it looks like there's a lot of grey squirrels in the area, but actually we've tracked it and realised it's the same one. It's just been reported so many times because people understand that that's really important to protecting their red squirrels.
Yeah, it gives me a lot of hope actually that locals are so passionate about this. And I suppose one of the benefits of being a local charity is we can do this on such a local and specialised level. But also we are part of other projects. So for example, the Red Squirrel Recovery Network. So tell me about that. What is it? How do we play a part in that?
Yeah, so the Red Squirrel Recovery Network, it's a lottery funded project. It's been in the pipeline for about 5 years, but with various different reasons, it kind of didn't get off the ground. But it's a big collaboration project between ourselves, the Lancashire Wildlife Trust, Cumbria Wildlife Trust, Northumberland Wildlife Trust, and some Southern Scotland projects, the UK Squirrel Accord, Animal Plant and Health Agency, the University of York. It's huge. And we've had some funding from the lottery to do the development phase of it, where we kind of developed the project, said what we were going to do. And now we have been accepted for the full 5 years. So we've just started that. We've just got our permission to start, which is great. And what that will mean is more job roles. So we'll be recruiting more staff. We'll have a dedicated communications officer that will spread the word and cover all of that large area that I mentioned before, kind of getting people involved. And like I said, spreading the word about red and grey squirrels. We'll have more people on the ground that will be able to do grey squirrel control. And as part of this project, in line with the Animal Plant and Health Agency work that they've been doing, we'll be trialling a delivery method for a grey squirrel contraceptive.
Oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah, so it's not ready yet. Yeah, a lot of people have kind of seen it in the news and think, oh, you know, you should be using this contraceptive. But the reality at the moment is it is still in development. So it's an oral contraceptive. And the idea is that it will go into feeders. Grey squirrels will be able to get into that feeders, eat the bait with the contraceptive in it, and then it works as a contraceptive vaccine. So it works in a similar way to vaccines rather than hormonal contraceptives. And that will reduce the fertility of those squirrels to just kind of get a bit of a jump on their breeding and hopefully lower their populations.
So how do you make sure that only the grey squirrels are getting that and not the reds?
Well, that's what we'll be trialling. So as part of the Red Squirrel Recovery Network, we will be trialling the feeders that have been developed. So I've got some props here, actually.
Yeah,
Shall I get them out? And
Oh,
gosh, sorry. Just to give a little bit more of a visual element. So this here is a grey squirrel. And this here is a red squirrel.
Oh, it's quite a size difference there.
Yeah, so you can see that the grey squirrels are about twice the size. about twice the size of red squirrels. So one of the feeders will kind of go on the weight of them. So the maximum weight that a grey squirrel gets to is about 650 grams. So they will go onto a feeder, stand on it, and it will weigh the animal that's on it. And if it's within that weight category of a grey squirrel, the feeder will open and the squirrel will be able to get in. It does mean that with those ones, the younger grey squirrels won't be able to get in, but it will target the majority of that breeding population of greys. And then there are some other ones that will be trialled in other areas where it's a weighted door, so the grey squirrels can push that open, but the reds aren't quite strong enough to be able to do that. So depending on the location of where these feeders are going out, one of those will be trialled and hopefully work and then be used for the actual contraceptive.
So you say this is in the very early stages. How long do you think it's going to be before something like that is ready?
I don't want to put any numbers on it because it is really hard to tell. And obviously with research and development, you can have an idea and then anything can go wrong, whether it's the prototype doesn't work or funding might not be secured. But we are hoping soon. We've come really far in I've not been involved in developing it, but the researchers have come really far in the development of this contraceptive. And the fact that we're at this trial stage with the feeders is really promising.
How do you think that this compares then to the current grey squirrel control method? If that was to go ahead, do you think that that would potentially be more effective, or would they work alongside each other?
So they'll work alongside each other. So with just control, we can only really do it in the households that agree with grey control and in the woodlands that we can have access to, where if we have the fertility drug, we can basically put that into more areas and people will agree with it a lot more because it's not as harsh. But if we just did the fertility control, then we wouldn't see any decrease in the grey population because they just breed that much.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's interesting seeing the scale of the damage, essentially, what greys have done. Just while we're on the props, I know you've got some here as well. That will actually show us the scale of the damage that greys can actually do, because it isn't just reds that they have an effect on. They have an effect on the wider woodland, right?
They do, yes. So
quite
all of
big
these
prop,
it's quite big.
Illustrate.
This was all one big stick, but it's been cut down, thankfully. The kind of a lesser known problem of grey squirrels in woodlands is the impact that they're having to our trees themselves. So both red and grey squirrels do a behaviour called bark stripping, where they physically strip the bark off of trees. See it in things like deer as well, they do it. But the damage that grey squirrels are causing to our trees is so significant that we're actually seeing a lot of tree death because of it. So they target trees around 10 to 40 years old, so those younger woodlands. So all of the trees that were planted about 25, 30 years ago, we're seeing large-scale damage on them now, and they're either completely dead or they're quite shrubby because they've lost that top canopy. So you can kind of see on here, they physically strip the bark off of there to get to the nutrients underneath it in that soft tissue. But once those soft tissues have been disrupted, the tree itself can't get the nutrients, can't get the water, and it disrupts that flow.
And that has a real long-term effect, doesn't it, on the whole woodland, because trees take such a long time to grow. If you're damaging the younger ones, then what kind of effects does that have overall if we're looking at the bigger picture? Yeah,
so, things like oak, they support thousands of other species, and oak is one of the most targeted species. I mean, this is silver birch here, I don't have oak to show you, but oak is one of the most targeted species for this bark stripping damage that's being caused. So you think of if those trees are dying, the knock-on impact that's going to have for thousands of species in the woodland is astronomical.
And that just shows the importance of the work that you guys are doing, because you are so specialist in what you do. We're going to get onto kits as well and looking after them shortly, but you are one of the only sort of specialists, I guess, in that area. And looking at the wider ecology of it all, it is thousands of species, like you say, that are involved, that are getting damaged by greys and that sort of thing. So if you guys were to stop tomorrow doing what you do, what would the effect be on our reds? If everybody just stopped trying to revive our red squirrel population?
Well, within the next 10 years, we wouldn't have red squirrels anymore.
Wow.
So it is very much of if we didn't work, if none of the volunteers did their work, then we would not have reds.
It's shocking, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's really scary.
quite,
It actually is making me tear up a little bit because I can see our little kit Houdini over there, and it's getting me emotional. It's only the second time that I've ever seen one. And if you guys were to stop and across the country, if the effort was to stop, we just would not have our native species anymore. And the effect that has on woodlands, like you were saying, it's catastrophic, really, isn't it? So if people do want to see a red squirrel, whereabouts in the UK can they see them, both locally and at a national level?
So you've got Formby and Ainsdale, so they're both really good woodlands that have got reds in them. Northumberland, Cumbria, Scotland have got most of the red squirrels in the UK. I think they've got 75%.
Yeah, over 70% are in Scotland. So if you're lucky enough to live in Scotland or you're able to get up there, you're more likely to see a red squirrel than in England, unfortunately.
When people are out in woodlands, what should they be looking for? Do they like certain tree species, or is there anything in particular if they want to really look for one?
Look up. Go at dawn, look up and be as quiet as you can, and then you'll hear them and then see them move across the treetops. I tend to look for movement of trees. So if it's moving a bit weird, look at that, because that's probably got a squirrel or a bird in it.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to have to go having a look at some red squirrels very soon, because I've not seen one in the wild. The only ones I've seen are the ones that you guys have reared. So I would love to see one in the wild. Now we're going to get on to the orphan kits. So that's an interesting part of your guys' jobs, because as the Wildlife Trust, a lot of people think that we rescue injured wildlife or abandoned wildlife and that sort of thing, but we're more towards conservation, hence the name Conservation Chronicles of the podcast. So tell me about this very niche part of your job. Like, why do we have to help orphaned kits, and what does it involve?
So here's a very random part of our job, but unfortunately, what happens during the breeding season sometimes, so red squirrels will breed in spring, and then depending on kind of food availability and weather, they'll have a second litter in summer. And for a multitude of different reasons, whether it's that the mother has had to move the nest because it's been disturbed or something's happened, she might move her babies out and then one falls and she doesn't come back for it. The baby might not be thriving, so she might kick it out of the dray. And we get phone calls from members of the public to say that they found one in their garden, and then they come into our care, and we hand rear them with the idea of releasing them back into the wild.
And how many do you take in per year? Is it a lot, or is it not very often?
It's not very often. So Houdini is the only one we've had this year, so that's fantastic for us because that means there's more out in the wild. But last year we had 2, so it really does just depend on what happens in the wild.
So tell me about Houdini then. He's being very quiet at the minute. Just as he's about to have his moment, he's just silent. He was running around before. But the viewers will probably be watching this after his release, but just talk me through, how old is he now? How did he come into your care, and what's the plan over the next few weeks and months?
Yeah, so he was about 3 weeks old when we got him. A member of the public in Formby found him in the garden and took him to the local vets, and they gave us a ring because they knew we looked after red squirrels, and we know we have the specialised equipment to do that. So got the ring, came, collected him. His eyes were still shut. His tail was just still very long and not curled up at all. So I was hand feeding him every 3 hours. Thankfully not through the night at that age, but yeah, every 3 hours. And then slowly just weaned him off the baby cat milk that he's been having into nuts and into soft fruits just to get him back to the wild. He's then moved from a really small crate to this cat crate and then into a bigger dog crate that we have so he can practice his climbing. That means so when he falls, he's not falling very far. So when he gets bit better in about a week, we'll move him into what we call our soft release pen. So that's just a bigger pen that we've got in Formby, and he can just learn to climb into that. He then has the rain to deal with and the wind, because at the minute he just has my living room. So then once he's been in there for a couple of weeks, we'll open the door of that and he can come and go as he pleases. And then all of a sudden they just stop coming back and they're just out into the world.
So how does the behaviour change throughout then? Because I'm assuming if you're getting them at a very young age, you sort of hand feeding at the start and then they gain a bit more confidence and you think, right, it's ready for the next phase. So talk me through how that changes throughout.
So they just start off being very sleepy and they don't particularly move much, and they'll just come for you when you've got the syringe full of the milk, and then he'll eat. Then all of a sudden he's just not as interested in the food, or he'll be just climbing a bit more and awake a bit more. So you pop some branches in the cage so he can try and climb, and that's what he does. And then all of a sudden he doesn't want you there at all, and he'll bite your fingers if you come near him. So yeah, they turn very much back into the wild animal that they are very quickly.
Yeah, and what about food then? So do you have to order, is it kitten milk, is it?
Well, it's called baby cat milk.
Interesting.
So not kitten milk, baby
Interesting.
cat milk. So yeah, we have to special order that in. So that's what we feed. It's got the best nutrients for them. We have our own amounts that we feed them based on their weight, and we just feed them that every 3 hours at first, and then it goes to 3.5, then 4, and then all of a sudden none.
So due to capacity, I believe the vets actually call you guys when they have an orphaned red. So talk about the relationship that you have with vets and how they can help you. I guess it goes both ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we've got a really great relationship with the vets around all of the areas that we work in, and it is really lovely to have them on board because they're there for kind of everything that we need. So when the squirrel originally comes to us, if it hasn't already gone through the vet, then we'll take it to the vet just to have a little checkup, just to make sure that everything's okay, there's no injuries or illness that we need to be aware of. And yeah, they know that because we, like I said, we have all of the equipment and the capacity to be able to hand rear them, that we can do that side of it. But if we did have any concerns, they're always on hand. We've got their phone numbers. We can ring them if we need to. So I think last year or the year before that, I had a baby red squirrel that we were hand rearing, and unfortunately she got a UTI. So yeah, it was straight to the vets, kind of discussing what the treatment options are for that, because obviously they're so tiny that the medication that they would give to a dog is obviously going to be far too much and far too strong. So we kind of talked through how to scale it down and be appropriate for that squirrel. She did get over her UTI; she was absolutely fine. But just having them to be able to rely on is so important for the work that we do.
So when you get to that end stage, then it's release day. How does that feel for you guys, having brought them up from a young age?
Bittersweet. Yeah, it's lovely. You know, we try not to get too attached to them because we know that the end goal is for them to be released. But you know, when they've been living in your house for however many weeks, it's you know, kind of seeing them go on that journey can be a bit bittersweet. But if they can get to that stage, if they can get to the soft release pen and they are thriving as a squirrel, and we open that hatch and they go, and then they'll maybe come back every so often, just to take, you know, over the course of a week or two, they'll come back. We'll monitor that, and then they'll just be gone forever. That's so lovely because it means that we've been able to help them and we've done our job.
You've done your job, yeah. So what about monitoring afterwards then? Is this something that you guys do? Was it ever a thing?
So we don't anymore. Historically, we have microchipped them and then had feeders that could read them. But I believe that was part of a PhD project, and we don't have the funding for that anymore. So we just kind of release them and hope for the best. We do a biannual monitoring where we do keep track of all the red squirrels in the area. So it is nice when we can see them on there.
Oh, tell me a bit more about the biannual monitoring then. How does that work?
So in spring and autumn, we go out 3 times in the morning and we have about 26 sites that we do these in. So without the help of volunteers, we would not be able to do that.
That's a lot.
So it's about half an hour after sunrise, which is probably the reason why we do them in autumn and spring, because I can't imagine doing that in summer. But yeah, so they go out when it's not rainy, when it's not too windy, and they just record what they see. And that's how we know that the red squirrels are doing well, or how when they're not doing so well.
Yeah, interesting. So just to go back to the kits then and the work that you do with them, do the numbers differ in terms of like the litter between greys and reds very much?
Yeah, so the grey squirrels can have more in a litter. I think one of the highest that was recorded was about 9 in a litter, which is a lot. For red squirrels, we'd probably see about 3, sometimes 4 in a litter, but we can get sort of maybe 5 to 6 in a grey squirrel litter. Obviously, there's so many things that can vary in what you would typically see. But one of the problems that we are seeing now is that because of things like climate change, we're getting more mild winters. Grey squirrels, because they are out competing our reds and they're kind of dominating a lot of these food sources, we're actually seeing breeding all throughout the year with them.
Just for greys, that is?
Just for grey squirrels. We haven't had any reports of red squirrels that are doing the same. If we didn't have grey squirrels, maybe reds would start doing that as well. But yeah, we've had reports from people that are either like foresters or landowners that have said, midwinter, they've seen baby red squirrels running, baby grey squirrels running around, which is just not typical of their natural breeding season.
And that's quite recent, is it?
Yeah, I think we've heard more reports of it. I don't know whether there's more reports of it just because people are a little bit more aware and they're trying to, they're kind of seeing that a little bit more, or whether that is increasing because of the climate changes and kind of what we're seeing in terms of weather patterns at the moment.
I'm wondering how much of a problem you guys think that's going to be, because if we're talking reds might have like 4, for example, and then greys are having up to 9, that's almost double. So that not only are they already out competing for food, potentially out competing around the year, and in terms of litter size as well, do you think that that's going to cause a massive problem?
Yeah, definitely. I kind of said a little while ago that we would typically see less than 1 red squirrel per hectare. That is the natural density that we would see, and the natural density that our woodlands can really cope with. Maybe up to 2 in an urban area, but typically kind of less than 1 red squirrel. In some of the woodlands that have been monitored throughout the UK, they're getting up to 5 or 6 grey squirrels per hectare, which is just far too many.
Yeah.
Which is why we're seeing so much woodland damage and the impact that that's having. So yeah, I think the increase in breeding is obviously going to perpetuate that as well.
Yeah, it is. It is scary, but you know what? It gives me a bit of hope about this Red Squirrel Recovery Network project, with it being 5 years. Obviously, it allows you guys to have more capacity as well. But yeah, it is a bit concerning looking at these numbers now, isn't it? So if people do want to help red squirrels to thrive in the areas where they still have a bit of a stronghold, what sort of things can people be doing in their gardens? Or if they don't have a garden, are there any other ways that they can help?
So one of the things we kind of don't recommend is feeding. So if you do a lot of supplementary feeding and have lots of bird feeders, it's a massive contact point for squirrelpox. So we recommend just scatter feeding every other day, once a week, just so there's still a bit of food there for the reds, but there's so much natural food for them to go at that they don't really need feed every single day from the gardens. If you don't live anywhere that's got a garden and you can't feed them or you can't do any of that, volunteering's a massive thing. We're always looking for people to help us, just to do the monitoring, to do the grade control, or to do any of our community events that we do.
And yeah, just to add to that, even if you have a very busy life, we've got a bit of micro volunteering, I suppose you could call it. If you see a squirrel, let us know. We've mentioned the biannual monitoring that we do, which is our standardized monitoring twice a year. But so much of our information that we get that directs our conservation efforts comes from public sightings. So if you're out walking the dog or in the park with the kids and you see either a red or a grey squirrel, we've got a website that you can submit that sighting to, and that just helps us keep an eye of what's going on in terms of the population and where we need to focus our conservation efforts.
And do you want to know that specifically for the areas where the stronghold is, or across the area that we cover?
So specifically in the stronghold, so kind of along that Sefton coast. But I mean, if you let us know in all of the Lancashire Wildlife Trust area, sort of all of the area that we span, that's still useful information for us.
Yeah, so submit your squirrel sightings, everyone. That's the key message. Because you guys have such interesting jobs, the last thing I'd like to know from both of you is, what is your favourite part? I'm sure you have lots of amazing memories if you'd like to share a couple as well.
Let me go first.
I think my favourite part is seeing them spread. So in the last 12 months, they've actually moved into areas that I have previously worked in to try and get reds in. So they've moved out to Prescott and they've moved out to Aintree. So seeing them not just in Farnby anymore, but move and doing what we think they should be doing, and they're actually doing it, has just been fantastic for me.
Yeah, that's definitely a really cool thing to see. for me, this job I just love. I definitely couldn't have an office job. I'm far too antsy for that. I love the variety of the work that we do. So, people always ask us, what does a typical day look like? But we literally have a red squirrel with us today. So it could be that we're out engaging with landowners, talking about grey squirrel control and how we can support them with that. Or, the weekend I was doing an engagement event, chatting to people about the project. We could be handling a red squirrel or putting cameras out in woodlands. It's so varied. And I love that aspect of the job.
Amazing. Thank you so much, both. It's been amazing to talk to you. I feel like I've learned so much in this episode. And also thank you to Houdini as well, who has gone very quiet in the background there. Now he's had his little moment. But thank you both so much. That's been so interesting to hear about.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the Conservation Chronicles, the podcast for the Wildlife Trust for Lancashire, Greater Manchester and North Merseyside. I've been your host, Lydia German. I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. I had a wonderful time filming it and learning all about this amazing project. If you'd like to hear more about this project and many more and all the different work that we do at the Trust, you can sign up for our email newsletter on the website, or you can become a member for as little as £4 a month and support amazing work like this, bringing back our species that are on the decline. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you at the next one.